Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the fellow students who are joining me in the classroom this morning, and good morning to those of you online. Welcome to our Sunday morning class with Guy Finley. For those of you who are new here, joining us perhaps for the first time, welcome. Our class today is one in which, in a moment, Guy will give a talk that lasts about 60 minutes on the topic that you see on the screen below you, and then after he's finished, we take a short break for about 5 minutes or so, and then we come back for part 2 of the class, which is a discussion in which the students here in the room and those of you online, you can join us and ask questions, send in written comments to Guy about the material he's presented today, and as always, the goal is the same. We want to deepen our understanding of what it is that Guy has presented today. And in deepening that understanding, learn how we can perhaps use it, apply it in our lives each day. So that is our purpose when we gather. And so our class will last up until about 11 o'clock, about an hour and a half or so. And then we often continue the discussion. And so we hope that those of you online can stay for as much of it as you can. And if you can't, come back. We have replays that you can watch at your convenience. Before we continue, for those of you in the room, just if you have a cell phone, do check and make sure that you've turned it off before we continue. And I think we're ready to begin our class today. Here is today's topic and the key lesson that Guy has written. Our topic is forgiving others their debts begins with paying our own. And here's the key lesson. All right, Guy.
I'll ask for it. Sally, I'll ask for the key lesson. Good morning. Forgiving others their debts begins with paying our own. Could this be why we have so many people that we can't seem to forgive? Because we don't see the relationship at all between the way in which we view them and experience them and the outcome of that level of consciousness involved in that kind of constant reliving of the past. We have a lot to look at together. Welcome all of you joining us online. I hope that you're here on time. I want to set the stage myself before I set the stage for a short act that will in turn set the stage. How many of you are getting the gist of what we're doing? Life never stops setting the stage for your development. Never. There's no moment in which, without realizing it, much as Shakespeare had alluded, that all of the world is a stage and everyone an actor upon it. Who's designed this stage? What is the play? What are the characters? What are their relationships? And when you can begin to see, as you will, God willing, especially if you can take the impressions from today's talk, that there is a kind of divine design to it, but for most of us, it's never realized. And so we wander around falling off stage, scrambling back to gain a position we believe someone else threatened or took from us without understanding at all what's going on. Our hope is this new understanding. So, have you ever noticed how some impressions are, without knowing why, you can see something, hear something, somebody can say something, it's innocuous at one level, just seems to be part of the flow of the moment, but for some reason that particular scene, that particular set of dialogue, it really captures your attention. Years and years ago, Dances with Wolves, do you remember this? Most of us remember that film. Kevin Costner. Actually, it was a brilliant work in so many ways. But one of my favorite scenes, there's two of them, but I won't get into the other one right now. One of my favorite scenes is Kicking Bird, who was the medicine man in this town, in this village, of American Indians. He has gone to Stands with Fist. This, actually a white person, developed around the role of Kate. Never mind. She was captured, she was taken in by the Indians and was raised by them, but she knows something of the white man's language. And so Kicking Bird, the medicine man, has met with the Costner, the one soldier living at this fort, who's quite, I do love that movie, very innocent and kind. And he wants to understand these Indians. Anyway, so Kicking Bird goes to Stands with Fist and says, you have to speak white man language with him. She says, I can't. I forget. And he's somewhat insistent until the point at which she suddenly turns and walks away crying, at which point Kicking Bird's wife comes to him and says, what was that all about? And he says, she just doesn't understand. And his wife looks at him and says, well, then why is she the one crying? I love that scene because it points out in an incredibly subtle way that there is a certain blindness that we have that keeps us completely separate from the effect that we have on other people, that if we could see in that moment the actual effect, we would approach that person or that condition completely different, so that we wouldn't leave conversations with people crying or angry, or we wouldn't walk away crying and angry, because there would be a different kind of simpatico that takes place in those moments that would essentially not just negate these negative outcomes, but produce in the revelation of this tendency of ours to meet everything with resistance. It would change us and give us another way of realizing something that's with us all the time but that we can't see. So let me bring up my actors, please. This is a brief stage enactment of a conversation between a spiritual master, a genuine one, and a seeker who, without knowing it at the time when he first comes, believes that he's sincere but doesn't understand what it is that he's really asking. And so this seeker comes to the master and knocks at the door, but the door doesn't open. The master says through the door,
"What reason have you come here? What is it that you seek?"
I've come looking for forgiveness.
Why? What is it that you've done against your neighbor?
No, you misunderstand. I don't need forgiveness.
Then why are you here?
Well, I'm hoping you can tell me how I might forgive all those who have hurt me.
Go away. You will not find that here.
And so the seeker, though he remains on stage, much like the prodigal son, wanders away and comes back at least 10 times, asking essentially the same question, and 10 times the door doesn't open, 10 times he's sent away. The 11th time, however, the seeker returns and knocks at the door, at which point the master says again,
"What reason have you come here? What is it that you seek?"
Well, I'm hoping to learn why, no matter how much I try, I have so much animosity in my mind and heart towards someone I seem to be incapable of finding forgiveness for him, let alone anyone else.
Yes, I see.
and the door swings open.
Please come in. The door isn't locked.
We'll take whatever little applause we can get. I'm speaking for our non-paid actors who seek union, but they're not in one yet. Let me bring up the key lesson for today's talk. It will explain better what you just saw and set the stage for the next part of our presentation. Please, somehow or other, don't be you today. I don't know how else to say it. It's not an insult. It means don't be someone who sits and throws popcorn in their mouth and hopes that the performance is good. Be someone who's interested in how it applies to you. Because are you not someone who is always blaming others for the pain that you're in and wanting to figure out how to get them to apologize to you instead of you understanding your complicity with that conflict that is with you everywhere you go, even if it isn't as rampant with certain people as it is with others? Here's the key lesson. Forgiveness is not the blind acceptance of what is dark, sinful, or just plain evil. Real forgiveness begins with seeing the need to transcend our own negative reaction to whatever we summarily find as wanting in someone else. After all, whose limitation is it when the best we know how to do with those who have hurt us is to hate or otherwise resent them and go on blaming them for the pain they've revealed still lives in us? After all, whose limitation is it that all we know how to do with those who have hurt us is to hate or otherwise resent them? Is it their limitation? Is my anger their limitation? Is my resentment their limitation? Is my fear of encountering those who have hurt me, is that their limitation? Whose limitation is it? You must be careful when you say mine the way you do. That limitation belongs to a level of consciousness that creates the enemies, and that in the creation of an enemy can't possibly forgive it, because who would I be if I didn't have someone or something to be against moment to moment, let alone be able to forgive them for what they have shown me is true about myself. You get it? So I'm introducing something new in talks. We're going to call it not just a key lesson, but a key question. The key questions are interspersed in these talks so that you can write them down or get them when you listen to this and then really contemplate it. Here is the key question for today's talk. Please bring it up. Whose limitation is our instant resistance to those who trigger it, that not only blames others for the bitterness of that ensuing suffering, but also makes it nearly impossible to forgive others for it? Read the first part with me. Whose limitation is our instant resistance to those who trigger it? Is my instantaneous impatience, is impatience not a form of judgment? Whose limitation is that impatience? Is it yours? You suffer it though, don't you? One day you'll ask yourself, and you realize, I don't know why I never asked myself that before. What is it that I have brought with me into this moment that I didn't know I brought with me into this moment? That assumes in the instant that you trigger that part of myself, that you have put this pain in me, and that now I must somehow prove to you, by blame or shame, your responsibility for what you have revealed in me, so that I don't have the right relationship with the moment of that revelation. I have an entirely wrong relationship with that revelation, which is I blame you for what I didn't know was true about myself, and in blaming you, I will never know the truth of myself. Do you see this with me? Transition. It's funny to have a man or a woman walk across the stage with a round two. From where comes this unconscious resistance? From where, that finds others guilty as charged for saying or doing what in our mind in that moment is unforgivable. Do you have this instantaneous resistance in you? Has it, by the way, over time formed into a kind of crystalline creature that no longer has to even see the person that you think about, that you don't have to see it. You can just think about that person and boom, the judge gavel come down, doesn't it? What's the nature of this resistance? Wouldn't it be good to know? You see, I have to assume certain things. I have to assume to some extent that you have begun to see that comes with you into every relationship you have. Something that will summarily judge that person or that circumstance, deem it not worthy or unworthy or not right or needing to be changed, and in that moment have no other position to perceive that relationship through other than the eyes of what? There cannot be resistance to any given moment without a judge that has come into that moment with us. It is impossible. I don't want to belabor it. Can you see that? How can I resist him? Here I am. I just look at you. Are there people you can just look at and you can feel a certain tension come up in you? Yeah, I look at and I think it's no wonder most people die of heart attacks. Why? Because somehow or other I didn't know it. I couldn't know it, even though I was constantly being reminded by a certain set of repercussions that pass through me every time a moment comes that isn't wanted. Boom, there it is. And there is what? A judge that has come in that methodically, mechanically compares and measures what it sees as the shortcoming, the faults of others, to what? Do you see the judges there? By what does it judge? Come on. I have a book of rules. Now, you don't know my book of rules. I've tried to educate you. So I judge you by my Bible. Everything about the way I look at life is through the set of rules that rush forward, are conflicted or consoled by a moment, and then decide that's a good moment, this is a bad person. This is a bad person, but my book of rules says that you should take an eye for an eye. Doesn't it say that? You can spout all day long. My book doesn't say that. Love thine enemies. You show me how your reaction that summarily judges any event with any person has any love in it at all. Love transforms reactions into realizations. Love is the transformation of a negative reaction into a self-rescuing revelation. That's what love does, as you'll see. So my Bible, I don't know about yours, I see the beam in your eye. Do you not? That's right out of Scripture. I see the beam in your eye. In fact, you've got like a log cabin in there. And you keep building it in spite of me trying to tell you how to take it apart so you could be as perfect as I am when I read about myself in my own Bible, written by me. And not, incidentally, not written by you, written by a millennia of unconscious reactions, each and every one formulating the next rule and law that others need to live by so that I can be sure that I am an authority the way I imagine myself to be. Yeah? So I see I see the mote in your eye. I think that's the passage, while ignoring the beam in my own. Yeah, but the beam thing, the log cabin works too. You know, Christ wasn't the only teacher. All these things, they run through all true teachings. It's said of Buddha that there was a certain monk that he was very critical of, Miksala, his name was. It's hard to think of Buddha being critical, isn't it? Hard it is to think of that. And yet, he was critical of Miksala because Miksala, he claimed to know the punishment that everyone that he didn't like would receive when they reincarnated. So he knew the punishments of his favorite sinners. He just knew it. Don't you know? And one day he said quite clearly, he said, how do you know, Miksala, the complexity of human character? In fact, he said, whoever judges others digs a pit for themselves. That sounds familiar too, doesn't it? Whoever judges the character of others digs a pit for themselves. Transition. How many of you carry a pick and shovel with you everywhere you go? You're sitting in a fine restaurant. The waiter can't see your shovel. If he could, he would avoid you. But the minute that something happens that you don't want, you're there and you're digging a hole, judging everything around you. And why? Because when I opened my book that I didn't even know I carried in with me, which, by the way, the book weighs 8 billion tons. You want to know why your shoulders are bent over? Because you carry with you the weight of all of this preconceived judgment that waits for something to act and produce the trigger that brings it out. The question is, if you're following me, are we still communicating? Is this true or not of us? How do we move past this tendency to judge when it's just the thought of you, the mere idea of you, and I want to dig for you a large hole to put you in? Isn't it true? I know you. I mean, some of you I've worked with for years. I'm almost Jeff Foxworthy for a moment. You just bring up the name of one person in your past, one circumstance that took place, and you want to see somebody's eyes roll back in their head and their head spin around. In that split second, you are gone. Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? That's another song. Thank you, John. I'm just going to talk to you. Where have you gone in that moment when your own mind brings up that person, that time, that place? Where have you gone? You have gone into, more accurately, your attention has been placed on the image and the identification with it that has created that reaction. So that in a heartbeat, the mind is seized, shuttled back into what it calls the time when you are not shuttled back into the time when, you are shuttled into a present unconscious relationship with a body of conditioned memory that holds within it its own reaction, so that as the memory is recalled, all the commensurate reactions, associated thoughts and feelings come up with that reaction. In that moment, I must have something to judge for the pain of resisting my own memory. Because that's what you judge. God, haven't you had enough of realizing that you're so quick to judge people that they never have a chance to even show you, even remotely, maybe they're not the same person they were? Because you, with that judgment, you in quotes, we're not judging ourselves for this, you instantly bring back in them the thing you don't want to experience in them. You literally bring it back in them the moment that you meet them with your certainty that they are the one to blame for your pain. Just like that. Can you see this? So that in that moment, All I know is that something has come up, but now we're beginning to realize that this that's come up is a pre-concluded judgment, a kangaroo court. Why in the name of God did they were kangaroos being judged back in the, no, meaning that the thing is rigged, isn't it? And it's rigged against anyone that triggers this part of myself that already knows not just what's wrong with them, but what they needed to do and didn't, which is why I continue to hold them in contempt of my court. Please? Well, how can I forgive somebody that I've already judged? Can I? Please don't let the question slide by. See, I know what I'm up against. Believe me, I know what I'm up against when I talk to you about this. Some of you are so sure that your resentment and hatred and enmity towards those that did the unthinkable to you proves that you are right for living in that deep, dark, negative world, because you wouldn't be there if they hadn't done what they did. They did it 2 days ago or 50 years ago. Why are you still in the dungeon? You have to answer that question. I can't answer it for you. You just need to see, is that true or not? Now I ask you out loud, is it true or not? Yes. This is what's so miraculous about God, grace. I've recanted this particular story from the New Testament a couple times, but I have to do it again so you can see something yet deeper from it. You know this story, I've covered it before. Hopefully you've read something about it. It's not the only place that you can find an example of this. Here's Christ, and he's in a marketplace, and Mary, this woman, apparently a harlot, not really, but she's sleeping with another man and she's still married. And everybody there gathers around, and what are they going to do to this woman? They're going to stone her, because that's the Jewish law of the time. Now, I don't think this actually happened, okay? I think this is a story that represents a principle. But the story goes, and the timeless divine principle that Master Christ was able to express through this teaching, he said, wait a minute. If you're without sin, go ahead and throw the stone. Throw it. Go on. If you have no sin, throw the stone. Let me put into this quickly. In the old language, the idea of sin was not some morally bankrupted person. It alluded to that because all moral bankruptcy comes out of an individual failing to enhance, let alone realize, their relationship with what is good and true and light. So that sin was missing the mark. It was not living up to, in that moment, not some mark established by the Sadducees or the Pharisees, not something enshrined in some temple, but missing the mark was to miss the moment in which you were given to rise above what you came into that moment being and living from. That was what missing the mark was. That's what sin is. Sin is to stay in that separate state that judges everything, instead of understanding that the judge and the identification with it is the only sin, because it keeps you from realizing what that moment came to show you about yourself. Did we get that? So he said, if you're without sin, throw it. Go ahead, do it. And you know the story. What happens? They don't throw the stones, they put them down. Now, lovely story. But what was actually going on? First of all, could Christ, let's just change the story. Could Christ be there and they're about to throw that stone and he goes, don't you judge that woman? What would happen to those people? Yeah, he'd stone Christ, as they did. No, he couldn't say, don't judge that woman, because the minute that you insist upon something, you create an according second force, don't you? So he would actually enhance their negativity, only it would be then directed at both of them, not just the woman. Please? So he said, those of you who are without sin, cast the stone. What he was saying in that moment is, and this is to the consciousness, tell me, can you see how you are in your own way no different at all than this woman? Sure, she slept with somebody or she did this, but what about you? You steal every opportunity you can. You're only interested in your own advantage. You'll bury anybody for 5 cents if that 5 cents is some sense of value of yourself. Just like that, you'll do it. Yes or no? Get out of my way. Don't be like this. That man or woman has no idea that that lives in them, because it comes to them to say these things and act these things from a nature that, like those who were about to stone Mary, believe is superior to what it is that they're about to make suffer. So Christ was saying, well, go ahead and make her suffer if you don't suffer from the same thing. Wasn't that what he was saying? And why did they put down the stones in this story? Because in that moment, he helped their unconscious nature awaken to conscience. And in conscience is something that only can be found there, and that is real compassion. He awakened compassion in them. And the compassion he awakened in them was by helping them to see in that moment their infinite capacity for perfect similarity with that which they're about to judge. Do you see it? Please God, that instead of being this man or this woman who, without knowing it, believing it's voluntary, without knowing it involuntarily, will pick up the stone and cast it at anyone or anything that challenges its pre-concluded scriptural image of itself that is so perfect and beyond compare that has its right to stone, to hate, to dismiss anyone that isn't like it. I know it's difficult to grasp this, but it was in that mob's recognition of their similarity with this woman that they were able to see how their hearts and minds were hardened against her, because that was the only way which through all of that time they were kept blind to what they couldn't see in themselves. That's how Christ stopped the woman from being stoned. He helped them realize that they come into the moment with the stone already in their hand. We'll get back to that at the end of the talk. So what did he awaken in them that was asleep? Conscience. But that's just a word. What does that mean to me? What about conscience? Compassion. You and I never see our infinite capacity for perfect similarity with anything other than when we look in the mirror on a good hair day. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's where I want to be what I see. You look good. You do. I don't know what happened. You get a good night's sleep? You're talking to yourself. No, but let me look at Terry or Ellen or Patricia or Barbara. Let me look at somebody that's sitting there like, do I have an infinite capacity for perfect similarity? Go slow. Oh, I do, but I don't want to know it. I don't want to know that when I look at something that I don't want to see, that my eyes were blinded before you even appeared in my life by an insistence on on the part of that consciousness, that it should only see and revel in that which is written in its Bible as being true and good. And if it's not written on those pages, if it's not written on this hardened heart and this sleeping mind, then it is perceived as being an enemy of the state. Please? Let's bring up the second key lesson, please, looking at that parable from the New Testament. Pretty simple. Read it with me. Compassion is the flower. Forgiveness is its fruit. And love the vine. Compassion's the flower. From it grows forgiveness. How were they able to put down their stone? And though it's not written that way, can you not see that when they put down that stone, they had forgiven that woman her sins? And who were they to forgive that woman their sins other than someone who saw, I need to be forgiven from my sins? I need to be forgiven for where I miss the mark, because I miss it all the time. But I never know I miss it. You know why I never miss it? Because I'm so accurate with the stones that I throw. I'm so quickly convinced that you are the source of the conflict I'm in, and all I need to do is crush you, meaning get rid of you, avoid you, change you, control. That's all I need to do. And then I'm no longer troubled by you, because I'm no longer, I don't have to look at myself anymore. Let me read to you an explanation of that. Leave that on the board for a moment, Sally, please. One more time. Compassion is what? Forgiveness. And what's the vine? Agape. Not this phony baloney love that belongs to this diversity, Mexican and Flumen, or whatever all that business is, where we're taught to fear what happens to us if we don't tolerate what we understand ought not be tolerated. You and I, we look out and we try to be a tolerant human being. Tolerance is secret superiority, isn't it? No love and tolerance. Love doesn't require tolerance. Love is acceptance. And what does love accept? That which it sees, that everything it sees is in fact a part of itself, even if it hasn't flowered yet. Even if the compassion isn't there, it is part of love. And there can't be compassion without love, and there cannot be compassion or love that isn't the essence of forgiveness itself. Listen to the following, please. Compassion is born of our infinite capacity to realize perfect similarity. And in that realization, the ability to transcend the immediate but false sense of self that believes what? That it's different than whatever it judges and blames for the unwanted experience of itself. Do you want to be understood? Isn't that kind of what drives us in life quite a bit, isn't it? When you fall in love with somebody, part of the reason you fall in love with them is because he or she gets you, and then they really get you. See, a small change in the tone of words and everything changes, doesn't it? I would argue with you that everything wants to be understood. I think even a flower or a tree wants to be understood. I know the creatures that are my friends on my property, the deer and the turkeys. I know all of those creatures that they want relationship. They don't even know why they want relationship, but they want it. You and I want to be understood. But we have no tolerance for understanding those that seem to go against what we understand as good and true, do we? So if you've understood this idea of compassion, what time is it? Are we getting this together? Transition. question first. Is there any compassion in impatience? Is there? Hello? How about in irritation? Is there compassion in irritation? No. How about resentment? Is there compassion in resentment? So I pretty much outlined most of our relationships with people that set us off, yes or no. Even moments, doesn't have to be people. So basically what we're outlining is that, and listen, is that as we haven't this compassion because it is overruled by the judge in favor of the instantaneous separation of seeing that you're nothing like I am, but if you were, we could get along. Therefore, I judge you, and you have to change. But looking at this from another point of view, and one day you will, I promise you, one day you will be, you know those I have a little butane long neck squirrely lighter thing from my fireplace, you know. One day, you know, and you have to click it to make it go. One day you'll hear that click and you'll be present to the flame instead of burned by it. You have to actually recognize not that you don't have the capacity for compassion, but that the way you're presently wired, there is no compassion in your relationships at all. Because it is summarily replaced almost instantaneously by the reaction to whatever it is that runs into your estimation, your pre-concluded consideration of the moment. And the judge is there, yes or no? So how are we going to get this compassion? How are we going to, this is very much, again, this is the reversal, first and last. How are we going to change this conflicted, judgmental nature for one that has compassion in it? That would be a question at some point, God willing, that you would want to know and ask yourself over and over again, every time you catch yourself dismissive. How many of you are dismissive? You know what that means, don't you? Isn't being dismissive a form of judgment? And please understand this, because I know some of you think, oh God, I'm so far from perfection, I might as well throw in the towel. Very few people know what an absolute monster lives inside of me. I get a glimpse of it from time to time, but then I dress it in a nice dress or I put a suit on it and we go out to eat and everything's good because it goes to sleep and I think it's gone. It's not gone. How am I going to awaken this compassion? Because if I can't awaken this compassion, I will never be able to forgive anyone. And forgive me if this, no, I don't even care. It gets so old. I forgave him. Sure, you forgave him. That's why you still think about that moment when he did this. It is not you who forgives. You want the image, the sensation of being someone who forgives. And you can believe in that dream so completely that the moment comes when the instantaneous resistance to that memory pops up and it's replaced with that sensation of myself who, like Christ, forgave everyone. Forgiveness is the real forgiveness. You will know it has happened when the reaction you have that's habitual, that you can't escape, is replaced in that split second by an understanding that you now have put yourself where something is going before you, not to judge, but to release. How do I awaken this compassion? I hinted at it. Does anybody want to tell me? How is this compassion awakened? How is it awakened in those others who didn't know they had forgiven that woman because it wasn't part of the story, but clearly had forgiven that woman? How is that compassion and forgiveness awakened? How was it done? Through our infinite capacity to realize similarity. That's how it was awakened. And that capacity to realize similarity does not happen by accident. It happens by accident in the world. You go out into nature, we've talked about it before. I love the summer day. The fields are green. Fiona. Everything. It's beautiful. I'm like a leprechaun. Because that's infinite capacity for similarity, isn't it? The beauty's not out there. The beauty's not in here. The beauty is the divine idea, the image, the living word that holds that, where the observer and the observed are no longer different. Isn't that perfect similarity when observer and observed are one thing? Yeah, I love it out there, but let me look at Chris or anybody, not you, Chris, okay? More like Deborah. I have a jury that sits inside the courthouse of this unconscious nature that has already gone into deliberation before you even arrive. Guilty. But if I understand, as the point of this talk, that in the same moment when I get ready to pick up that stone, and we're going to look at this more carefully, am I picking up the stone or am I walking around with a bag of rocks? Hello? How am I going to set it down? Transition 3. If we could listen, which is part of what you're learning to do, just the act of trying to see. You know that real seeing is a form of listening. If we could see, if we could listen closely enough, and I mean this in a certain metaphoric term, and every single time that we reach some summary judgment about someone, if we could listen closely enough in that moment, you would literally hear a prison door slam shut. The instant that nature is triggered and starts to judge, if we could listen closely enough. See, we don't hear the prison door slam shut because all we hear are the voices that are telling us how that person has made a victim of us, how they have hurt us. Now, I read in that key lesson, I'm not saying to you that men and women are not god-awful, because they are. A sleeping human being is a god-awful human being. They are, in the true meaning of the word, not someone who has just sinned, meaning who lives in order to hit the mark their culture has told them makes them of consequence. They are outside of God's law because we actually worship men and women and the society that creates their authority as being the mark that we're meant to hit. I was told that growing up, weren't you? Here's what it means, son, to be a successful human being. Be someone respected. Don't let it bother you that you have to give them money so that they pay their respect to you. Be someone who has authority. Don't be bothered by the fact that you have to exert a certain fearful state in order to make them tremble in front of you. Be all of this, and when you do, you will at last be at the top of everything that you're meant to be, and you grow up swallowing that hogwash. We all did. Because it's not your mother and father that passed that along, or their mother and father. It's been passed along the 7 generations of this idea that somehow to hit the mark, to be of consequence, means to be someone who is not just adept at judging and finding sentence, but then controlling that person that you have judged so that they stop irritating what? What you don't see in yourself as being the same character and quality, only in a different measure. This is what you don't get. There was, they don't say how many, but let's say there were 12 men and women surrounding Mary in that courtyard, ready to throw stones. Do you think that every one of those 12 people, when they heard, if you're without sin, cast, do you think they all had the same thing that came to their mind? Or did all of them see where they slapped the child? Did they see where they took an extra shekel out of the pot instead of leaving it in as an act of kindness? Each and every one could see in that moment, wouldn't they, something peculiar to some undeveloped aspect of their essence. And where the moment asked for that to be balanced, but they didn't go serving the mark, they served their own mark and served themselves. And in serving themselves, strengthened the judge in themselves, because God forbid they should actually see that they acted against themselves or anyone else in that moment. Please, still with me? So you would hear it shut. What you would hear shut, what I called the prison door, you'd experience your own heart closing down. I mean that quite literally. You would experience yourself suddenly being cut off. And that's what we are when that moment comes and that judgment comes. We are cut off. And the pain, you know that how we, the idea of throwing the stone? What if you could see that it's the stone that has the jagged, sharp edges to it? And that the reason that you want to throw it at somebody is because your hand is closed on it. That's what you have to see. I'm in pain. Why am I in pain? Because you broke the rule. You're not the right kind of person. And you never will be, I might add. Because I can never forgive, how many times have I heard this? I can never forgive somebody who was like that. I'm just thinking of the story of Christ and Judas. There's so much you don't understand. But there's so much that you can begin to understand. And just to make an exercise out of this whole talk, the next time that you feel that, and you do, have you seen it enough? Have you felt your heart shut? And the mind become laser-like in what it says has happened and why they're wrong. Have you seen some of that? If you could just take that moment when all of that slams shut, when the fist closes around the stone. What is the stone the fist closes around? In essence, isn't it what we call this judgment? Doesn't it close around the judgment? And where does the judgment come from? Who and what I have been. And who and what I have been has no interest in seeing that it has come forward as myself and secures its place as in prominence by punishing anyone that doesn't live up to its ideal of what someone should be. And therefore I live as this judge that is constantly judged by my own actions. The more you clench the stone, the more pain you feel. The more pain you feel, the more you want to blame someone for it. The more you want to blame someone for it, the further away you are from awakening the compassion alone that would allow you to see, you know what? How many times have I cut off another human being on the road? How many times have I pulled up behind somebody wanting them to get out of the way, not just in my car, but psychologically? How many times have I instantaneously become so defensive that the person who, without knowing it, this consciousness, it works this way, this unconscious nature. Do you know it is a for you conspiracy nuts out there is a conspiracy, but it's not between people. The instantaneous agitation and defensiveness comes up, and it knows that it will create some summary resistance in the one looking at it. And in the summary resistance that agitation brings out of the other person, it validates the agitation, and then you have two people each applying force to one another and nobody understanding that they have been and sat in judgment of one another and have no possibility of ever having any compassion come to release them from that which came into that moment with them. Catch yourself picking up the stone. It's that simple. It's the reaction that's jagged. It's the negative reaction that's jagged, not the one who brought it up. They can't be any different than you can be. But you can begin to be different by recognizing this jagged reaction. Don't you blame others for your reactions. Why would you blame someone for your reaction when it is you clinging to it that causes the pain? you see that, you'll begin to understand what this similarity is, because you'll see that, look, I'm not, there sometimes on this road particularly, happens all the time, you'll hear somebody go by, they might as well look like they might as well have flames coming out of their body and and they must have a helmet with horns and a red tail off of the end of their motorcycle. Yeah, like that. How do you respond when you see some psychopath go by? There's always a comment of some kind, right? And you don't say it. Well, you know what you think. Is that a judgment? Isn't it? You say, well, I'm not. You say, I wouldn't do that. Well, maybe if you were 12 years old again, you might, but that's not the point. I'm not like that. How about when you're racing on your way to make sure something goes the way you want it to go? Are you not deriving an identity from some kind of sensational state, just like that man or woman is on that motorcycle? How about when you relive something that was so painful? Are you not in a hurry to get away from that, just as that person in that car cutting you off is? Can you not see the similarity? You see the similarity, you'll understand compassion. You understand compassion. Forgiveness is built into it, and it is divine in origin. Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
Welcome back, everyone. I have a bit of news and notes for you before we move to the part 2 of our class, which is our open discussion with Guy. So let me share a few tidbits with you. First of all, our upcoming schedule this week. Our next class is Wednesday, the 29th at 6 p.m. And this Wednesday is our second Deep Dive Wednesday of this month. So we want to encourage you to join us for that. And a reminder that Deep Dive Wednesday is where the topics that we discuss that night are ones submitted by us, the fellow students. What is it that you would like to ask Guy about? What inner life questions, perhaps something he said in a talk or something that he has written in one of his books or you have heard from a master, but what is a topic that you would like to have Guy lead us on a deeper exploration of? That's what we've been doing, and it's been a very, very enriching classes. That's this Wednesday, May 29th. You still have time to submit a topic for this Deep Dive Wednesday and for the ones in the future. Again, we're going to continue, I think, doing this particular class twice every month. So if you have something on your mind you'd like to submit for consideration, you can go to guyfinley.org/contact and write your comment, question, or request there. But Deep Dive Wednesday. Another event that we've been talking about, just to remind you of, is on June 6th, Thursday, June 6th. Guy will be participating in a Zoom event where you get to talk to him and listen to him live. That Zoom event is sponsored by the New Renaissance Bookshop up in Portland, Oregon. It's an event that we have been grateful for their help and sponsorship for many years now. And for that particular event, if you'd like to join in, go to guyfinley.org/ticket. There is a nominal fee, excuse me, of $10 by New Renaissance, but you can reserve your place for that particular event. So that's June 6th, New Renaissance Zoom event. Also, it's kind of the Zoom event is a lead-in about a month now from now. June 21st and 23rd is our annual Talks in the Pines here. Great opportunity for you to join us here live if you can for that 3-day event, or you can, again, participate online with us. The topic for both workshops, both the event in New Renaissance event and also the tips, the topic is the same. Your passport to a new world beyond stress, struggle, and useless pain. And so join us if you can for tips. Go to guyfinley.org/tips. That's TIPS, Talks in the Pines, and you can get more information about that upcoming event. And the final bit of news is that this is the last week, the final week for our donation promotion this month. We've been offering, in exchange for a $10 donation, an 8-hour CD album, which was from a Talks in the Pines event from in the past. And the title of that CD album was Secrets of Spiritual Success, 8 CD set, downloadable, as well as a CD and 2 bonus talks on meditation. So go to guyfinley.org/special if you're interested in that still. This is the final week for that. All right, that's enough for the news and notes. Let's return to the classroom and see if Guy is ready to begin our discussion.
News and Notes by John. And now for a commercial break. Yes, John, I'm ready.
All right, Guy. Again, for those of you online, go to webinar. You can click the hand icon and join us and talk directly to Guy, and Facebook, YouTube, and all over. You can send in written comments and questions, which we have several sent in already. So I'm going to start with one of the written questions. It was left over from our last class, and it came from Gino, and then we'll see where we go from there. Here's the question from Gino. He said, lately I've been feeling that I don't want to hear a person I care about complain. I want to be compassionate and listen. It doesn't feel right to give advice, but I attempt to change the subject. Am I in what the actors described taking it on?
Yeah, I got it. I just got the whole, doesn't feel right, you know. Nice deep breath, everybody. Part of your spiritual awakening and commensurate development is that you begin to look at life through eyes that don't just see everything as right or wrong. That's this judge, it's incessant. I'm afraid that I might be doing the wrong thing. Why am I afraid I might make a mistake? Because I have a judge waiting to bring the gavel down on me. And I'm not talking about my wife. Learn. Not intellect. See. Use the choices that you make as best you can make them, not as the ground to prove or disprove the choice you made, but as a point of revelation entering into that relationship so that you can grow. You're not here to become anyone or anything that you imagine. You're here to grow into what is unimaginable in your heart. And there's no path to it. There's no particular right set of choices and actions and disciplines. All of that is the garbage that belongs to a world that sold you those so that then you could judge yourself and come back to that authority and say, where did I go wrong? And then they'll sell you the next set of conclusions. Learn. And you know why it's so hard to learn? Because all I know how to learn is what my past confirms or denies in me. So learning means I have to be somehow without the past. I didn't have time to put it in the talk. There's no compassion in the past. I think I mentioned this yesterday. Memory has no compassion. There's no conscience in the past. The past is dead. It's Lazarus without Christ. Christ being that which calls out of the tomb of this conditioned judgmental nature, that which has passed and that which can be passed on, that which you can go past. So Gino, use it. Use everything. Sometimes it's the greatest thing in the world to sit and listen to people complain. No, I mean it. But not when you sit there and go, God, when is that going to shut up? No, because all that resistance comes up, that impatience. And you sit there, and instead of acting out the role of the person who resents the same routine again and again, you act out the role of someone who's listening, but while you're listening to that part of you that wants to shut the door, wants to shut it off. Because how would you know? What did Buddha say about Misgala? What did he say? He said, you know, you think you know everything about everybody's character. You're convinced you are so Buddha-like that you know exactly why everybody is the way they are, why they're doing what they're doing, and where it's all going. So let me just shut it down before we get started. Is that a good? Yeah, it is, isn't it? What shut was your heart. You don't know why people are the way they are. And you never will until you know exactly why you are what you are in the moment. That's the great hope for mankind. The light of Christ, the light of truth, the divine love, whatever you want to call it. That it might go before you to bring an end to the judgment, and by bringing an end to the judge, instead of seeing what you blame, what that stone, instead of seeing what you're about to throw that stone in, instead see the nature that wants to throw the stone. Then you've got something. So experiment, Gino. Get wild. Oh, you think I'm kidding? It'll be a wild day for you when instead of doing what you've always done, you say to yourself, you know what? It's not in thought. You've come far enough. This is a laboratory moment. I'm going to see what I can learn. This person that's doing this, they may never learn a thing in their lives, and it's not my place to make them learn. My job is to hit the mark. That's my job. And if I hit the mark, it is impossible that the person or persons that I'm with don't have an opportunity to see where they've missed the mark. Because one day, as a result of hitting the mark, you will know a completely different way to respond. And your response might not be what you need to correct in them. Your response might be perfect silence. And in your perfect silence, that person might see themselves. So that as you hit the mark, they have a chance to see where they keep missing it. Follow me. Over to you, John.
We'll go next, Guy, to Fiona in the queue. Good morning, Fiona. You're unmuted.
Hello, John. Good to listen to you, Guy.
It's good to
To
hear
hear
you
everybody
too.
else.
Yeah.
There's so much to say, and then there's nothing to say as well. But I know I have everything in my own heart, which was given to me. That awareness, it's not mine, but that's there to explore, and I need to reach out as well.
Yes. Absolutely.
So when I feel and incriminate myself for being identified with things, which is clear, it's so clear. I'm definitely seeing where I can just be and just allow it all to be there. And I don't need to try and talk to myself about what is identity and what is possibility. It doesn't matter. It will all be given to me and I can just watch it. And so I'm definitely having more spaces, not nearly enough, to just lie or sit and just have everything just there, just letting it be.
Yes, those are true words. They are spoken truly, and I have no doubt that that truth that you are expressing lives in your heart. I know something of you. But you must also know, and all of us must know this, I judge because I don't know what else to do with my pain. I don't know what else, I just don't know what else to do with the pain. And if I see it clearly, the pain is the judge. And if I'm ever going to not gain, but enter into the grace of that living light, of that love that is the vine, and I'm going to go into this, I don't think it's going to be in the June tips. I think it's going to be in the December talks. But it might be in June. Do you know when it is that we come to the end of this suffering that's inherent in our relationships? I'll tell you when we come to the end of the suffering inherent in our relationships. Are you ready? When you no longer resist that suffering. That's when you come to the end of this unconscious suffering, when you no longer resist it. And that's what we are created to do. Because it's not, you think it's the suffering of your husband or your wife or that person who did that to you, that angry adult, who you think it's their suffering. It's not their suffering. It's the suffering of a consciousness that doesn't know it has fallen and that it misses the mark every time it tries to raise itself by standing on someone else. And you start to realize that the only way that the suffering is going to end in the world is when it begins ending in you. And you can't bring an end to your own suffering, but you can see the source of it and die to the source of it. That's the unspeakable miracle. Who would even think that those words could be said, let alone lived, in a world that worships its pain and calls that pain its progress, its security? That's why so many are called and few are chosen, because few will choose to experience the pain that Fiona's talking about. I know that something wants to be born. I can feel it moving in my heart. There's no question about it. If you're a true aspirant, you can't, it's there. You might as well try to cover the sun with a piece of dark paper as get rid of the pain of a heart that's trying to awaken. But I'm going to have to do my part. I'm going to have to do my part. And would that cup could pass from my lips. And you know the rest. All is well, Fiona.
Yep, right with you. Thanks.
Yep, all the way to what doesn't end. John, to you.
All right, Guy, to me. So let's go next to a written question that we have, Guy. This came in from Annette. Annette says, this is the challenge. What if we deal with a group of people who judge us and gossip, as well as be disrespectful, eye-rolling, oversimplifying a person, lashing out angrily? If a person has a misunderstanding with someone, perhaps they should address it in
Oh, you want to hear a grand day that's coming, Annette, if you stay with your work and do it? You ready? The whole world can be the most ugly, miserable thing that ever existed, and you will stand in the beauty of understanding that they can't help themselves, but that you can keep yourself from judging them and therefore becoming part of the evil that you judge. Evil judges evil. Hatred judges hatred. Fear judges fear. Impatience judges impatience. What a grand... I'm not just making this stuff up. I'm too old to make up stuff now. Birds fly, fish swim, men pray. Each to its own nature. Don't try to make the bird swim or the fish fly. Don't try to make human beings into the nature you imagine they should be. Use the similarity you have with their nature. Why are people so unkind and constantly gabbing and doing? What makes them like that? Who can tell me? Their pain. And their pain causes a similar pain in me, doesn't it? Ah, said the grasshopper. I see. Learn, Annette. You've been around long enough. Even the nature of your questions is starting to change slightly. But I still want to know what to do with that person that I hate. God did not put hatred in any soul. To you, John.
All right, we'll go next to Frida in the queue, Guy. Hello, Frida, you're unmuted.
Hello, Guy.
Hi, Frida.
Hey, how are you?
Still kicking.
Yeah. I'm still kicking too. It was really, I think a year was very difficult,
Yeah.
but I'm seeing now progress in it. You think that nothing is going to change, but I someone from my past where I was really looking up to, and I always was judging her.
Yes.
And I didn't saw her for years and always avoid her. But now I was in a shop and I was going around the corner and I saw her, and it was in a second. It was just something in me was turning around, but it was also the other second was I was saying, "Hey, hello, how are you doing?" It was just those two were in a split second.
Yes.
It was what I was really surprised.
Yeah. What a great, see, that's a great observation, Frida. I want and I don't want at the same time. And then I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm talking while I wish I had avoided who I'm talking to. I mean, it's perfect. And then we wonder why we need drugs. Honestly.
But was that the same? The same one?
Well, Frida, look, what's good about your question is that you had a real experience. And in that real experience, you saw something that you've never seen before. Now, what you have never seen before has become a seed. These impressions belong to another order of consciousness. Real impressions, that which is truly observed, belongs to another order of consciousness besides the one that only sees, oh, I want to avoid this person. Oh, I better say something to this person. I don't want them to think that I'm judging them, so I'll say hello while I judge you, basically. And to see that gives you a new, another kind of window, Frida, another way in which to realize, well, that's interesting. And then just live with, well, what's that about? Don't try to analyze it. You'll bury yourself if you try to analyze it. Just recognize that, and yes or no, because you know what this is like. Have you ever seen somebody that you're not particularly fond of, maybe who hurt you or betrayed you, whatever it is? Have you ever seen them, and the minute you see them, you're not thinking to yourselves, turn on a dime? But do you not want to turn on a dime? And then a thought says, but spiritual people don't turn on dimes. They turn and face their adversary. And now you're going to go into battle with what you think is your adversary. They're not your adversary. They are a complementary part of that moment, appearing to help you discover something about yourself that cannot be seen in any other way, except in that moment. And if that's true about the moment, then can I begin to grasp the idea that maybe I wonder how long I can stay in this moment. I wonder how long I can remain aware of this push me, pull you, of this hate you got to pretend to tolerate you, of all this conflict, because then you are the witness of a conflicted, judgmental mind instead of the unwitting servant of it that never knows how you wound up going to dinner with somebody and paying for it, by the way, that you don't even like, in case that's ever happened to you. Learn. Don't try to win. You can't win. The three most despised words in the English language, because all I have is the hope that I can win a time to come, win enough, win that I can get through. So all I hope for is what I can win. Winning in this world is the other word for becoming. It's a zero-sum game until you understand it's a zero-sum game, and then you're no longer a stupid piece on the chessboard. You are watching it play itself out, and you understand the rhyme and the reason and the intelligence in all of that movement. That still doesn't make you a winner, sorry. But it keeps you from being a loser, for sure. Over to you, John.
All right, Guy, here is a written question. This came in from Christine. Christine asks, well, what about judging the Israeli and Gaza situation?
Christine, I'll help you understand it. I'll rephrase it for you. You, like everyone else on this planet, has one of three reactions. I hate this. I don't know what to do about this. Both of which are saying, I'm in pain because the situation isn't resolved and it's filled with evil people doing evil things to each other, and it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, you still see the evil and judge it, do you not? I'm not confounded. I'm not without words. It's just that you have to see and hear and feel with something in you that makes no sense to you at all. Makes no sense to you at all to not call what you hate evil, to not call evil something you hate. Makes no sense to you. That's evil. Of course it's evil. You think that killing other human beings in the name of your God isn't evil? It's evil incarnate. You think that greed isn't evil? Greed is the mouth and the hand of fear. And then out of fear you create a God to rescue you from your own ambition. That's evil, and it does wrong to everyone and everything that comes into contact with it. But why do I have to embrace evil to be free of evil? Why must I hate evil? Is it not enough to know what evil is as I understand it? Because if I understand it to be evil, I'll have nothing to do with it. And nothing to do with it doesn't mean that I stand idly by, given whatever I think is true or not. It means that I will step in as best I understand that moment with my understanding and let my stepping into that moment show me what the path is the next moment. So that I'm not marching in lockstep with every other idiot who believes that whatever their ideology is that tells them they're right and everyone else is wrong, and then they go to war and destroy each other in the name of love. Peace does not have hatred in it. Peace reveals hatred for being evil. Then you start to see that, then you know exactly what position to take. You don't think you pay for the hatred you feel. You literally pay for it. You support the advertisers that spew it, that breed it, east, west, left, right. You pay for it. And you pay for the sensation that's produced while you watch it. And then you hate what you watch because you're against those who don't understand what love is, and you're paying for that. And one day you'll close your pocketbook. You'll just close it. Doesn't mean that you don't recognize as best you can what is right, true, and good. It just means that when you realize what is right, true, and good, it never sets you against another human being. Ever. It doesn't mean you agree with them. This is what you can't grasp. All you know is left, right, good, bad, up, down. That's all you know is a mind that fluctuates between the opposites, each opposite judging the other, and then you identifying with that judge and calling yourself right or calling yourself wrong. It's all wrong at that level. I went on a little longer than I intended to on that topic, but there you have it. My wife has come up to the mic, John.
Hello, my name is Patricia. You know, years ago I realized, like you take a horrible monster, and I think of somebody like a Hitler, and if you hate him, that's the same hatred he lived from. So your hating him is the same hatred. What's the difference?
It's the same pain
Right.
that requires something to blame.
Right.
In order to blame, there must be a hatred of it, a sheer resistance to it. The sheer resistance doesn't care what it resists. It just cares that somehow it can resolve the pain it's in by destroying or killing something else.
Right. And I read a little article, a little snippet in a magazine. Remember the actor, or I guess he's still active, Will Smith? He made a profound statement, and he was so attacked for it. He had to apologize, but he was right. He said, even Hitler thought he was doing the right thing. And I thought that, you know, and that's exactly right. That monster thought he was doing the right thing, murdering all these people, just like any religious zealot murdering for their God. So, anyhow.
See if you can follow the parallel. Because this is a rough description of what one might call no mind, what one might call an awakened mind, what one might call an illuminated mind. When you go out and you see, as we're looking at this gorgeous day here in Michigan, come visit us in Merlin, Oregon. When you really see something that's beautiful, is your mind active or does it come to a stop? It comes to a stop. Why does the mind come to a stop? Because for a moment, there's no difference between what is observed and the observer. It just comes to a stop. And there's a sweetness in that stop, isn't there? You will know the sweetness of that mind when you finally understand you are always looking at something bigger than this mind can understand. The moment never stops speaking to you. The beauty speaks to you, the way the leaves move, the sun on the leaves, everything's speaking to you. But you only want to hear what applies to the book that you read from. Instead of understanding the book of life was put in you and you in it, and that it is always speaking, and you need to be quiet. You can't bring the quietness to yourself, but one day you'll see. I keep trying to figure out how to, this moving part, just everything's pretty good except this one little part that's moving against everything else. So I need to go over there and attend to that moving part. And the very movement over to that moving part to change it is born of resistance. The very activity of resentment, of resistance, creates a certain kind of karma. And now the whole field's out of whack. And now you're busy. Who made you the arranger of the stars? Are you the arranger of the stars? Are you? Yes, I am. Some of us are far more arranger of the stars than others. What do you think? What are all your thoughts trying to do? They're constantly trying to rearrange the constellation of a conflicted set of thoughts and feelings so that somehow or other, when Jupiter arrives with Mars, then peace will the planet, blah. That's what I'm doing all the time. I'm a control freak, and I live alone. Oh, God. Over to you, John.
All right, Guy. Well, we have Jill in the queue, and I also have 3 written questions. But let's get to Jill, and we'll see where we go from there.
We're going to Jill, and then we're going to Babs in Blue.
Hello, Jill. You're unmuted. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Guy.
Hi, Joe.
So I was thinking I had an experience on the freeway this week. I was passing a semi on the left, and I looked in my rearview mirror, and there was a car behind me, and a man was signaling. He was kind of going crazy with his arms, like telling me to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I guess I have to move. And
But I
it was
couldn't.
he was very angry. And so I moved and I kept thinking in my mind, wow, he's really angry. He's really crazy. And I continued to think about it throughout the day until I heard this talk today,
Yeah.
and I was listening to you thinking, you know, him and me are the same, because it's not that I did those movements, but boy, have I like done that to people, thinking, get out of my way, I'm in a hurry. Please hurry.
Yes, Joe, absolutely. What a marvelous connection you've made. Just to see, I can't get over the anger I feel thinking about that angry man. I'm obsessed. Now, I'm obsessed differently than he was obsessed, because he was obsessed with anger, trying to get me out of the way. Now, I'm obsessed with thinking about how angry he was. I'm feeling that anger. Negativity is a kind of disease, and you don't have to be a carrier. Anyway, Jill, great comment, right on the money. Keep going. Babs in Blue, B-I-B.
My name is Barbie. What you just said about trying to be the arranger of the stars, and so many things that you said today just really hit home. Last weekend, Doug and I went up to Portland because it was my granddaughter's birthday. And we went with their family to the movies. And the first thing that my son-in-law does is goes up to the concession stand and orders this huge, humongous, carton of popcorn. Okay.
It's called a tub.
A tub, thank you. And immediately, oh my God, how could he do that? Because,
Now, hold on, what's wrong with the tub?
Well, okay, so they're sharing it, between their family, and they don't need to eat that popcorn, Babs thinks. Then, after the movie is over, he goes up to the concession stand again, because I didn't realize it's a 2-for-1.
You get a refill on any tub.
You know that, right? Anyway, he got a refill, and I'm like, good God. I mean, this judgment came up. I didn't say anything.
Did you enjoy the movie, by the way?
Huh?
Did you enjoy the movie?
No, it was terrible. But, anyway, it was a kid's movie. It was okay. Then my granddaughter liked it. But I really, just in Technicolor, could see this judgment come up in me so instant. And as you said, I had carried that into the theater. I had been holding the stone of judgment. And you know what? I could see later, basically after listening I saw the judgment. I saw that it isn't right, but it comes with me. But what am I addicted to? Barbie is really addicted to her image. She's addicted to how people should look. She's addicted to being thin. I don't want to be part of you people who are eating a lot of food.
Everybody, let's go.
Get out of here. But anyway, it's kind of like there is a similarity.
Yeah.
I may not be eating popcorn, but I'm addicted to the image. I'm addicted to being consoled in different ways.
You can say the word I, and I know that you...
Barbies.
Yeah, and you need to be conscious as you can.
Okay.
you're not going to, not for the longest time. The voices remain with you because you're fascinated with judging yourself and what they blame. If the voices weren't the voice of resistance, and the resistance didn't belong to the judge, who would I be in the moment when my son-in-law buys that popcorn? Just watch, Barbara. This is what I said. Your suffering comes to an end when you come to the end of your resistance. And the resistance belongs to a conditioned nature that always knows that people shouldn't be little piggies. They should be beautiful, thin, and dressed in blue. Like you. We're all cut. Don't you see if Fiona's still on? No, we all have the cloth of our kin. I didn't weave that cloth that determines the content of my mind, that creates the reactions that it does, but I'm set against your clan. Whatever your clan is, if it's not dressed like mine, if you don't eat like I do. And by the way, just to be clear, people look at what you eat and think you're an absolute Fruit Loop. But then what relief to know it's just a giant box of cereal that you happen to be born in. It really is. Like, it's not so great. It's Fruit Loops. Okay. Don't judge yourself for being a Fruit Loop. See, the thing is, you just want to be in pain. With God as my witness, that's all that this nature cares about. Because if it can be in pain, then it can think about pizza. And then when it has the pizza, it's in pain. Dare I go on? All right, John, one or two more, and then we're going to call it a day.
All right, Guy. Well, I have 3 written questions, so I'll start with one of them and see where we get.
Take the most recent, take the earliest one, and probably the last one we won't get to unless I can fly through this.
All right, Guy. This one came in from Roy, and Roy says, I'm still in a rock-throwing mood over what happened to me a couple days ago at work in retail. A man comes up to me and says, flowers. I said, what? He repeated the one-word sentence. I had to drag out what he specifically wanted, but he could have began the interaction by being clear about what he wanted in the first place. I get PO'd when people expect me to be a mind reader. I'm clear with what I want. Why can't others be?
Why can't they be like you are, perfect in every way? What's the matter with people today? The only person that's hurt by your anger begins with you. You were not created to be a self-harming organism. Can you think of any creature that God has made that is a self-harming organism? Only human beings. And then the pain that produces the harm then tries to create laws and rules to change the world so that everyone can live according to your rules and your laws. People gonna do what people gonna do. They are. If I had my mother used to say this, if I had a nickel, do you remember that? If I had a nickel for every time you this and you that, I wouldn't have had to divorce your father. Because I'd have kept some money. Roy, just for grins, why do you suppose someone walks into a store, looks at you and goes, flowers? Can anybody tell me why that man said flowers and not, I'm here because it's a this or a that and I need a bouquet or I need to plant something? Why would I just come in and say flowers? because I'm so locked into some kind of impatience or anxiety that I actually believe that the whole way should be paved for me before I get there. And you just happen to be an impediment, a necessary one, but you're just kind of in the way. Flowers. Someone answers you. You go to stores all the time. Have you ever been really nice and had somebody look at you like you weren't? What happens inside of you? Where does your niceness go? Where does it go? It disappears like the illusion it was. It's just one giant pair of shoes, Roy. It's one giant pair of shoes. Put them on. One more, John.
All right, Guy, one more. This was a second question that came in from Christine today. She asks, in the workplace, how do you respond when a coworker or boss is judging you? How do you protect your peace and ability to come to work each day?
There's this old expression. I've always loved it because it says pretty much along the lines of what I opened the talk with today about stands with fist and the medicine man. Do you think elephants are bothered by dogs that bark at their heels? Do you? Two completely different natures. Ask God to give you a godlike nature. And then have the courage to see that what you believe is a godlike nature is so far removed from it that it can't be believed. And in the revelation of the distance between the image you have of yourself and the realization of that disparity, you will be brought into an awareness that is godlike because it cannot act against itself or anyone else. This world cultivates thin skin. It cultivates it. And then it sells you the remedies. The idea of money or power or authority so that you can keep your thin skin protected. And the more you protect thin skin, guess what happens to it? Anybody? The thinner it becomes. Doesn't it? Now that I've fleshed out that part of the talk, I'll say goodbye.